Hello and welcome back to Kaizen with Luca. Today we have a pretty packed one, and I think one that is going to hit harder than any of the ones that I have spoken about in the past. Mostly because I think this is something that people have been people have been feeling for a long time, and I think this whole thing is primarily driven or felt in the Gen Z generation. So that's that's what we'll be talking about today, and it's this concept of feeling like you're out of time, like you're behind. And I'm here to tell you with certainty, and I feel confident that I can say this, that you in fact have time. You have time. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more today and what all of that actually means and how we can apply those things right after you watch this video and apply it today. So first, again, anything that we talk about in these videos are all things that I currently practice. So if you feel like you can't do it, if I can show up every day, or even if I miss a couple days because of things that are out of my control, we get right back up and we go right back into work. We go right back into creating and talking about all these things. We don't let anything stop us, even if we miss a day, because there's always tomorrow, there's always the next day. So, this concept, where does it come from? This concept actually comes from our good buddy, Gary Vee. Now, if you're not familiar with Gary Vee, he's pretty much like a social icon. I mean, I've talked about him extensively on some shorts I've created, but definitely look him up. He's an influence on myself because I just consume a lot of his content, and I think he embodies and talks about the ideas that I'm talking about here really well, and he also does it in a manner that is a little bit more, I want to say, probably haphazard than how I would go about it. I think I'm a little bit more PG in the way that I talk about all these concepts. So this idea is the antidote to feeling left behind. Once you realize that you have time, everything else suddenly just becomes that much easier. And just want to make sure. There's so many mobs here. So it's a reframe. We're not essentially changing the way that you're thinking. We're just kind of reframing the thoughts that you have about feeling left behind, because it's a reframe of perspective, not necessarily a reframe in how you're thinking about, certain things. Oh, did he blow up the... Okay. So, what does this actually mean? And I'm going to talk about this because I have some data and some things that I want to talk about, specifically to my Gen Z viewers, if there are any out there. And this will probably be mostly like late Gen Z, like myself. So those born in like 2000. So this is the anxiety. Well, the anxiety of being behind is almost always based on a comparison to someone else's timeline. And you can, if you kind of see where all the lines are connected, you're going to see where I'm going with all this. Gary Vee, he had a wine business early on. Early internet days. And he started that all online with no audience. Just showed up, started creating videos online. And this was like before we had social media like Instagram or LinkedIn. I think maybe early YouTube days. I want to say that it might have even been before that. But, you know, somebody could fact check me on it. Ooh. So, as I get this iron real quick. So he started a wine business before social media even existed. Like, before it was so easy to just hop online and get a video to basically go viral, and you would basically just, you know, get an audience instantaneously. And he spent years building this business before anybody was watching. Just quietly going along, creating this brand, talking about wines before anybody even knew he existed. And the people who seem to have made it fast almost always built for years before the moment anybody has noticed. So you have more time than you think. And the question is what you do with that time today. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the data points for what people are feeling like in my generation, because I think this will be an important statistic in understanding exactly how this has become. I kind of called it, and this is probably the wrong thing to call it, like an epidemic, but it's more so just probably more along the lines of, like, I guess, I don't really even know the word I'm even searching for, but it's along those lines. Like, it's a big problem that people are facing, and it shouldn't have to be. Like, this shouldn't have to be an issue, because for some reason everybody is rushing around. So let's talk about the statistics real quick. And I just pulled this up on my side screen, and I'll continue running on back to the houses here. So, Gen Zers, you guys are feeling like, and do I say that this personally? Like, do I myself feel behind? I don't know. I think it's all relative, right? If I look at people, nope. Oh my goodness, our chicken. Darn it. If I look at the people around me, right, I would say that no, I'm not behind. I'm probably ahead. And so, Gen Z, you feel like you're behind in life, like academically, financially, socially behind. Maybe, you know, you don't have as many friends as some of the other people you know. I don't know, I'm just making things up. Maybe you don't have that master's degree yet. So and so has I think one of the things is for like families, right? If you feel like you're in your mid to late 20s and you feel like you have to have like kids and all that, you're just feeling behind. And this has been identified as a widespread phenomenon driven by digital saturation. There's economic pressure, and also the impact of just what's going on around the world. And some people live on that macro level of, well, you know, everything that's going around on around the world impacts them heavily. And that's not really always the case. I like to think about the more immediate, what affects me. So that'd be more locally of like where I live, what state I live in, or if you're in Europe, it'd be what provinces you're in, or I guess districts. I'm not too familiar with the European side of things, but with that said, this anxiety will manifest itself as a midlife crisis in your 20s. A midlife crisis in your 20s, you're not even a quarter away through life yet. Let's say that you live to 100 and you're 25, you're a quarter away through your life, and you're already having a midlife crisis. Now, I guess if you were in your 50s and you were just trying to figure out what career you wanted to go into or something, that would be a little bit different, because there's just a little bit different scenarios there of like, what's your work experience, what can you actually do. When you're in your 20s, I mean, the world's your oyster, man. Like, there's no better time to experiment, try things out, and actually see like what your options are than in your 20s. So you shouldn't be having a crisis in that point. But everybody has a different situation. So I guess, I can't tell you what you should be going through or what you shouldn't be going through, like, in certain moments. But it's your 20s are really just a great time for you to figure out, try things out, go and just take big risks, because you have time to go reverse things if you had to. So, and research shows that Gen Z is more stressed, is more depressed, and prone to social comparison than previous generations at similar ages during that timeline. So we're seeing that people are feeling way worse as Gen Zers. I mean, we got it pretty rough, guys. I'm not going to lie to you. But just because that is what we see in society does not mean that that is what it has to be for you specifically moving forward. There's ways around all of that. And it's all about how you set yourself up. All about how you set yourself up. What visions you set for yourself. And just kind of the life that you want to live. And how do you get there? I was talking to somebody the other day, and he gave me some nice advice, so I'll share. And it was about my career specifically, and he was just telling me that opportunities are not going to come at the right time. They're not going to come when you expect them. And you can't really create a hard plan for your career, because it's never going to go the way that you think it's going to go. It'll always be probably the opposite. You can't hard plan your career and expect to be able to follow that plan to a T. There's always going to be something that foils that plan, and you're going to have to pivot and figure out what you're going to do. So I'm a person that I like to have a vision of, what's the job that I want? Do I have the skill sets for that job? Am I taking the right steps towards getting that? How can I upskill myself? There's a bunch of different things, and sorry that sounds a little corporate jargony, but those are the things that I'll think about. And I wouldn't even stress about would I hit this goal. And we're talking about timelines, and you can't really have a timeline, but ideally, I would love to be moving towards my goal and in a position that gets me a step closer, that gets me into doing some of the things that I want to do with the role that I'm trying to achieve. So right now, if I were to go position myself or apply to a job in the job that I wanted, could I figure out a way to get there? I believe I can. I believe I could. And even though I haven't done the specific roles or have done really any of it in the setting of the company that I work for, it's still something that I would chase after and try to achieve, because I just have that knowledge that I can and will eventually get there and do what I want to do. So, social media, and this is probably going to be a little bit of a longer one than the usual, but social media is the absolute killer for people. And you might be wondering, but I love social media. I love connecting with my friends and all this. The problem with social media, and the sooner that you're able to mitigate your social media usage, the happier you will be. I'm serious. If you give yourself time to focus on something else away from social media, because what gets clicks? Think about what gets clicks for a second. It's always going to be the headlines that are the craziest headlines you've ever heard. They're trying to get you to engage with them. They're trying to get you to click on their sites. So they're going to use essentially scare tactics to do that. And that's just manipulation. And somebody's going to talk to you through a screen. They're going to probably say things that will make you think, and maybe you agree with them. And you could even argue that, that's something I'm doing here, but I'm not trying to fearmonger you into, feeling like you're out of time, because what I'm telling you is that you have time. You have tons of time. Time is probably the biggest asset you have out of everything. You probably have more time than you think. And it's just about how we think about that and how we frame it. So, I'm just trying to figure out what this block is. Oh. So, you, on social media, and I would suggest part of the one thing that you can do is, if you have an iPhone or something, just Google how to set up time limits. I have a 2-hour social media time limit on my apps. Once I hit 2 hours, it locks me out. And then once you start seeing that, you're going to start seeing a bunch of ads pop up for people that want to tell you to download their apps and whatever, for essentially mitigating your usage, because you can just hit ignore limit and then, like, boom, you're all of a sudden able to go do that. But this requires discipline. It's a good discipline builder, because you're going to realize how much you actually doom scroll and the amount of time that you waste scrolling social media, and realize that you can get all that time back, and you can dedicate it to something that you care about. You can dedicate it to starting that business that you've always wanted to start. You can dedicate it to reading a book. So the thing with social media is that a lot of people are curating their realities. Nobody actually lives the lavish lifestyles that they say they do, unless it's like a crazy celebrity or something. Like, maybe then would it be true. But most of these influencers, they don't really live the life that they say that they live. And TikTok is a big comparison to this. Now, as a social media person, I love TikTok. TikTok is probably one of my most used applications. But with that, comes the issue of this is probably the biggest thing that fuels the comparison, which makes you feel inadequate, which makes you feel anxious. There's also a virtual overload. You pull that phone out of your pocket, you have access to literally everything out there. Get the world in your pocket whenever you need it. And nobody to tell you what to do with it. You're just always connected. And it's hard to step away from that. Because, it fuels the receptors in our brains. And it's hard to break that addiction to scrolling and doom scrolling. And when you're feeling stressed, you then turn to social media to de-stress. And that's when things start to get a little dicey. Because then you doom scroll for like hours and hours and hours. And then performance pressure. You're going to see people talking about how they make $10,000 a month. And you feel like, well, they're the same age as me. Why am I not making $10,000 a month? What are they doing differently? I can tell you that I make $1 million. Do I make $1 million? Well, what do you think? Does it look like I make $1 million? You wouldn't know. If I just put that perception out there that I did, let me go rent a Lamborghini for a little bit. Let me go make 30 pieces of content with this Lamborghini that I just rented. And it cost me, I don't know how much they cost, like $500 for an hour. And I can make however much content from that in an hour. And boom, I look like I own a Lamborghini. But who's going to know if I do or don't? People close to me. But if they don't know what I'm doing on social media, they're never going to know. So I would start figuring out how to mitigate your social media usage. Now, there is that external side of things that you can't control, like economic and structural challenges. So, cost of living is a huge thing. Maybe you feel like you can't do certain things because you have so much financial pressure and you don't have the funds to go do those things. So I understand from that standpoint. But that doesn't mean that you're necessarily stuck. You just have to work over that hurdle and, do things a lot slower than you probably would want to. But it's not going to hold you back as much as you might think. Also trying to find where the house is. I'm afraid I am a little lost. So hopefully we find the base here. Then you have your midlife crisis in the 20s that we were talking about. Unlike older generations that typically started out their lives with a higher sense of well-being, many Gen Zers will actually report that they already feel behind or stuck because of the economic instability. And in the U.S., you are twice as likely to experience depression compared to older adults because of these external factors. Now, I would tell you that you should worry about the things that you can control, because I understand that it's easy to start going down the rabbit hole of all the things that are going on around you. But once you get a grip of the things that you can actually take a hold of and control, and you actually feel accomplished in that, you start to get a better mindset on how you can go about life. Because you have control over your career. You have control over the time you dedicate to things. You have control over yourself on how you perform, how you learn. And then there's also uncertainty for the future. AI, big thing that everybody's talking about. What's going on with AI? Automation, the job markets, all this creates uncertainty for the long term for careers. And this is exactly why I'm building this. This is exactly why I'm building this. And that's exactly why I'm going to show you how to utilize AI for your benefit. because these things are not going away. They're not. So the sooner that you understand how to use AI and how to use AI for your benefit, the sooner you'll start feeling better about your long-term career. So I realize that this is starting to run a little long here, and I have not found my way back to the house yet. So I will not belabor you with more details, but I will leave you with this, because we do have homework, as always. So how to apply this type of thinking today. All right. So name one thing that you have been rushing because you feel behind on it. And ask yourself honestly, who? Behind what timeline? If you removed the comparison, what pace would actually make sense for this thing? And then you just build at that pace. And it's not slower, but it's just more intentional. So do that. You can even share that thing in the comments. So I'll tell you right now, mine, I think it's this. I think it's this because I saw somebody post a similar idea, and now I feel like, oh man, I'm gonna have to launch this a lot sooner. I don't know X, Y, and Z details yet. I don't know what all of this is going to look like. But I'm just being intentional with what I do, with what I say, and what I put out there, and the rest of it will follow. Because I actually might be ahead in my thinking here. And maybe I am. And that person posting a similar thing just shows that I am on the right track and I'm hitting the right pain points. So I hope that this stuck with you in some way. And I hope that you now feel like you have more time than you think. So I'll leave all y'all with that today. I hope you have a great day. Remember, direction changes everything. I'll catch y'all tomorrow.